Emily Elizabeth, and I'm the host of the What Fulfills You podcast, a show for and about individuals always seeking to be their best selves. On this show, we talk all about building the mindset, finding the right careers, creating meaningful relationships, and so much more. Welcome to the What Fulfills You podcast. Caroline, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me. I'm
Thanks
so excited
for
to be
coming
here.
on. You guys, just for context, Caroline is one of my close friends. We met a few years ago. We go kind of way back at this point now, but we've had throughout our friendship journey, I feel like a big topic we talk about is energy and connection, and then how that all ties into relationships and our own personal relationship journey. So obviously, today I brought her on to talk about it and our own journey and our own experiences. So yeah, welcome.
And it's fun to see how it's all evolved over the time.
Yes, yeah.
And we're constantly growing and like seeking new things, which
Exactly.
is like really cool.
Yeah. And I think that's why I told you earlier I wanted to start off with kind of what has been our personal aha moment or aha realization in our dating experiences over the past few years. And I guess especially this is really because obviously a lot of you guys who are listening, you're about in your early 20s. And I feel like these are things that I wish I could have been more aware about. Not that it would necessarily change the way I go about things, but I think when you hear a certain concept or realization frequently, just like when people say, oh, like save money for your future, you hear that notion all the time. It kind of gets embedded in your head, so you might not necessarily do it, but you know subconsciously these are some common patterns, and you hear it from people with more life experience than you. So what would be yours?
So I think I'm changing this a little bit, but this one time around, I think one thing I used to do, which has been, it comes in a different way I do it now, but I'm like such a giving person. And so one of the ahas that I feel like I have had is in my maybe past relationships, like I tend to give a lot, but maybe it's not been to like the people that deserve it. So in terms of energy and, you know, what you're kind of allocating resource wise, time, energy, like love and attention, all that. I think one thing would be kind of re-aiming where you direct that and like to whom you're giving it to, because the problems that you can come into when you give too much to somebody and like maybe they're asking for things and then you give that, but then you overextend and yourself to give more, then it doesn't get appreciated, and then, you know, you can have a lot of issues with like you're just feeling like depleted by this person and you're doing it by yourself without realizing it, I guess. And so I think that has contributed to like, you know, issues at some points. I'm blanking on what I said before though in the last run of this, and I thought that one was probably more relevant, but I'm forgetting what
it might come about. I think for me, I guess it's similar to what I've said before, but I think in a more concise way, I have had the aha moment in that more often than not, anyone that seems to be a really good match with me on paper is not really the case.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Gold.
Yeah. I think that's huge. Especially, like, I think you know this, like, I'm personally not a dating apps person. I think I used it during, like, I tried it for the first time in 2020 for shits and giggles, and I did meet one person off of there who was, like, my first match.
Okay.
But he was totally on paper, like, not even what you would think would be a good match for me, and he was actually someone that not only inspired me to move to Venice, but also part of my inspiration behind my marketing agency.
Really?
And then me getting into photography. It was a whole
everything
ordeal.
happens for a reason.
And he had a more artsy background, which I think a lot of people objectively could think, oh, Emily would probably pair better with someone in like business or things like that, right? Even I thought that at that point. And I think that was my first shift. And then in my last relationship, someone also with an more so arts leaning background or a balance between arts and science was also a much better like fit for me than someone that's in other backgrounds of like law or business, things like that. Like I always thought, I'll put it this way, anyone that has watched the show Suits, I always thought I would pair well with a Harvey Specter.
Yeah. Well, to be fair, I think most people think that.
Yes, right. So I think that because I'm also really assertive, and so I feel like kind of like Jessica Pearson in that show. It's like two fire energies, and in some cases it can work, but I've seen how it actually doesn't improve me that well. Like I do notice in my most recent relationship, him being in a certain way made me a lot more soft and compassionate and brought out traits that I needed to be better in. And I really like enjoyed that observation of how I instantly was a lot more understanding and less like in my head. And I think that was really helpful. So I think more often than not, especially when you're younger, I think people usually look for like the checkbox things.
Mm-hmm.
And while it's good to have an outline or vision of the type of person you want to be with, I think you got to be more considerate about the characteristic traits.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Compared to the external, like what kind of work they do, you know, like how they dress, like all these different things. I think some of those can be important, but I think the bigger ones are what their intrinsic like personality traits are.
Yeah.
And how they make you feel.
Right.
Yeah.
I'd say those are super important.
Yeah. That's 25-year-old wisdom now. Realizing after all those years.
Well, it's so interesting because in like, you know, the last conversation we had about this where, you know, you have these traits that you like, I either can like, by paper, you almost idealize those things, right? It's like, okay, this sounds great.
Yeah.
And then, you know, there's always that weird notion that like everyone's like, oh, well, you can't choose everything you want, but you can like kind of manifest the idea of the person you want. And then someone might show up that you actually have the feelings for that overrides everything else.
Right, which is exactly my latest experience, right? Because like, for example, I think people often, and I hear this a lot too with like around like in my social circle, like people in their 20s who are, again, they're still learning. So it's probably they'll see it later on. But for me, it didn't matter where the guy was on like his own career journey or like financial standpoint. I feel like that tends to be a superficial matter in Los Angeles or New York. To be honest, like I'm just gonna be like, everyone wants to go to nice restaurants and like experience like the finer things that you can, right? And I don't blame people. Like I like those things too. But, and I think that was actually ironically a concern for my last partner. Like I think he was concerned he couldn't do those things for me. And I made it so clear that to me, like those things didn't matter because I enjoyed his presence. Like I enjoyed his energy. But more importantly, like in terms of, okay, longevity, like can that last? Like as a partnership, that's a fair question. And then in that case, I focused more on what is his like actual habits in terms of what is he working towards?
Right.
Is there actual movement on that? Like how driven is he towards that? Is that something he has internally, like an internal drive? And he does by nature. So I've always been, you know, even in the pandemic, people go bankrupt and go to zero, right? Like their businesses and everything.
Stocks.
Yeah. So my biggest focus was always not where you're at now, but what can you do when you go to zero? Like, do you have the skill set to build again? Right. Because that's such an entrepreneurial, like that's probably where it comes from too, is my thinking is I could go to zero, but I can build again. And my like second cousin always said that too. Like he's always jokingly said if him and his wife divorced, like he would just give her everything, just ask like to leave like $100K and he would just start over again. Yeah. But like she'd take the house, she would take like every single thing and he would just build again. Yeah. Because like most entrepreneurs, like also that's Elon Musk, like he exited PayPal and was like, all right, I need to build something new. Yeah. You know what I mean? And they'll go bankrupt for it. Even like SpaceX was pretty much like on the bridge, like back in like mid 2000s, it was ready to die basically. And he 100%. Did everything because when you're so passionate about something and you are driven to work towards a specific goal and certain level of success in that range or that field, you will do whatever it takes. Right. So I look for that because I also have, you know, some people, acquaintances and friends where they actually genuinely don't have that internal drive, but they might live comfortably, you know, maybe for other reasons. So I think that's more important to me. It's almost like more evolutionary of a feeling though, to know that like, okay, you know, you could marry someone and then tomorrow, like, you know, not tomorrow, but 2 months later, whatever it is, they lose all their money. Right. And then if they don't have the skill set, or let's just say they weren't entrepreneurial, but they had family money or whatever it is. You know, if that goes away, then like, what are they? And are they going to do anything to so that's what I'm
provide
saying.
And so protect?
That's what I pay attention more, right? And that actually goes way back to when like you're thinking of like villages. I talk about this too, like the tribes and villages. Right. Can the man hunt? Yeah. Is like the basic of what I look at it, right? So I don't look at where you're at now, which I think it kind of bothers me when I hear the younger 20-someths that are like kind of unaware. They're like, oh, but like he's kind of like struggling and he can't take me on these dates. And I'm like, but how does he make you feel though? You know?
Yeah, yeah.
Right. But so to me, that's
And
like,
does he have like hopes? Or if he says he wants to, own his own business or do
right,
something
right,
one
right,
day, like,
right.
are you
Like
making
what?
steps
Yes,
that look like
yes.
you're actually going towards that,
Yeah.
or you're just saying it?
Yeah. And then on top of that too, like in any case, like I said, like back to the tribes thing, like can your man hunt is kind of like that to me is like if that's one of your needs or values, right? In a partner, in a male partner, that they can, take care of you to some degree, like whatever that need is, whether that's emotionally, physically, financially, or a little bit of everything.
Right.
Like that's kind of to me what I'm looking for. And so I look at it from a nature standpoint. And as you know, my tendencies, a lot of foreign guys from Europe. And I think, not to be biased, but I think from my observations, in part because of cultural upbringing and expectations from maybe mom or whoever kind of embedded those beliefs in them, I think I've had that experience where by nature, that's what they like to do.
Yeah.
And that was what I did not have with my ex-partner, actually, the guy from your high school, which
Yeah.
is funny, right? But he actually didn't have that because I don't think he was trained that way, actually, by his parents growing up. Like, this is what you do for your woman, like the basics of like opening the door or maybe like having the desire to take her to dinner and pay. Like, and I'm not talking from like a feminist standpoint because I can pay my own bill too. And eventually I think when you're in a partnership, you start to just like kind of share everything. I think that's kind of a given, again, depending on your dynamic. But he was he just didn't know that by nature. And I remember that was a number one thing I really needed in my next relationship, was someone that by nature knew, like had an automatic muscle of I want to open the door for her. I want to, and maybe it's because I saw my parents do that with my brother. When he went to prom, they're like, Michael, open the door for her. Don't forget, open the door for her. And then like buy her the corsage. Like it was just like doing all these things that I saw gets trained from a nurture, like just nature and nurture.
Yeah.
And when you get nurtured like that, I personally preferred someone that had that already. Like I didn't want to have to kind of train a guy or tell a guy this is how I want to be courted.
Ideal, yeah.
Yes. But again, we all have our different preferences, right?
Yeah.
So some people don't care about that, and I think that's fine. And then you can kind of pair up more with someone that's like that too. But that's what I was always looking for. And you can see that's like so internal, not like the external stuff that can also slip away at any point.
It's also interesting because, and I don't know if you follow any of those like accounts on Instagram that are kind of like energy and all that, but in relationship dynamics, and there's also the notion that like, women who, because as this like society kind of pushes us all to be like, independent, like, I'll open my own doors and do whatever it is for myself, which is like, I like to be taken care of. So that's one aspect. But then there's like, the more you like do those things and you present to a guy like more masculine energy,
right? They
don't like look at you as more of the feminine energy that they're supposed to do those things for.
Yeah.
So it's a weird like dichotomy that kind of
it's funny because my mom always kind of said that in a different way. I think she was always concerned that I was like a bit too tomboy, as she put it.
Okay.
Like, and like I think like me, you and Tara, like I think we kind of have our own masculine energy in a way, but I feel like we do. I'm not gonna lie, we do, and I understand that fear from a mom standpoint. She was always like, "Oh, you're never gonna have a boyfriend then, because they're never gonna want to like take." And I see that from a psychological standpoint. I do understand that. What I have noticed is when I'm with a guy that I really like, or I like his energy or presence, like my feminine soft side comes out immediately, and they can kind of take over in that way. And I prefer that too. Like I prefer that dynamic. So I've noticed the way I kind of split it is, in the work sense or in my professional personal life, I get that alpha assertiveness kind of comes out more. And then when I'm with a male partner, I'm more kind of in my feminine zone. And I think you kind of need that balance, right? Because if I'm always on all the time, I don't think I'm ever going to catch a break.
Right.
So I think sometimes you need that dynamic, and having self-awareness of what works for you, like what you need or what you prefer. I think that's kind of with trial and error, is also from my experience.
And what we touched on the other day when we were doing our nails was the energy that's like, okay, you're with a guy, and like how you felt when, you feel like you can fully be like yourself, right? And how that kind of gives you like the cute little feminine side, and then
Yeah.
when a guy like is like showing you that, oh, he like appreciates that, it's like makes
Yeah.
you just feel like
Right,
the best ever.
right. Because I was telling you I could be like a little. I think I used the word nugget. Like I don't know. I'm like,
Yeah, you did.
oh yeah, because
I was like, okay.
No, but like I showed you and Tara like those bears that I
Yeah.
like to send those little cute emojis, and it's just really funny because you can see like the childish kid Emily coming
Yeah,
out, and
yeah.
you really only get that when you're like actually dating me,
It's
or when
playful.
I'm fully intimate with you,
Yeah.
right? And I think that's a part of you that needs to come out, as you know, and so
Yeah.
you get that somewhere in your relationship, which is also what I like. How I've observed this a lot too. Obviously, your partner is not supposed to fill every bucket
Yeah.
of your life, and I think that's the importance of having a balanced like I guess round of circle of like friends, so different people you go for different things. And so I think I like that in the sense like obviously I can't be like that with my girl best friend, you know, like I want to be like that with a partner, but in a good way. You don't have to expect everything out of your partner like some people might have a previous notion of, is like, oh, like they're my other half, like they're supposed to be, you know, fulfilling everything. And I think that's why you should still maintain other relationships outside, because they still kind of feel a different connection, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
For the whole like persona. Yeah, I think.
Yeah.
That's where like I think there's like I forget what it is, but it's like one of those diagrams where it's like usually like religion and then your social life, so community, that whole aspect of community is super important. And then I guess like whatever your like career is, so like to have like the full balanced life, like you have to have all those things so that if, you know, something goes aflame or there's issues in one area, you're secure and safe in like your person and in the other areas. But yeah,
we talked about alignment earlier. And you kind of mentioned too that you didn't maybe necessarily realize that in the past, like the importance of that, but how would you say like obviously in being more in your mid late 20s now, I guess, I don't know, that's like such a random place to be.
Say late
I'm
20s.
not okay, you're
like
mid 20s
27.
dude, but I'm about to hit late 20s too. I'm turning 26. I guess that's still mid.
I guess
I don't know,
I'm like middle.
we're in mid 20s. We are in mid 20s. But I guess basically I'm pointing that out is because we just have a little bit more life experience than some girls listening right now, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of like from an older sister perspective. What would you say in regards to alignment? Like, what have you realized about that and how that plays out maybe in longevity?
Yeah, I think I was just having more fun, and I was so obsessed with like making everything fun, and I didn't have like I wasn't like totally committing to people. So in the beginning of that or things in my life, and so the fun is like that, and I want like no control, and I was like kind of free spirit but like wild feeling, and like I wanted to feel like my own thing, like I don't want to be tied down at all. But that's probably in part of like, you know, one, past relationships that kind of fed into that. And then two, going into the future, I was just like, well, I decided I was going to live so presently that like it was too present almost.
Okay.
But
that's
now,
something I have to add that you and I, and then obviously our other friend Tara too, like balanced me out because I tend to look ahead a lot.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We're really good at
that's
like,
why. No, that's why as a tangent, I feel like that was also my other like maybe secondary aha moment, is like realizing how the yin yang effect of friendships and partner, or like really good friendships and really good partnerships, is when they complement you in certain elements. And like me being a little bit more structured and like looking forward and planning ahead, like me just sending you a calendar invite. Like,
I loved the calendar invite.
Right.
Had the address.
But it's
like,
so funny.
Do I text and ask where this
and
is?
It's
and
on the
like,
calendar.
Oh, it's on the calendar.
But it's so funny because like you, like your partners, right, like are typically like that, right? And then like you're more like in the playful and like adventurous side, right? So I've noticed, especially with my last one, like having someone that is a little bit opposite, like where they are more adventurous and like can go not just adventurous but can go with the flow a bit better than I am, is a nice like complementing effect, you know?
I think that's because it expands your mind. And same with me, what I would need, or like I don't want someone too rigid, because that's also indicates to me like closed-minded. But like I need someone who like I, you know, the guy that I've been seeing recently, where he like makes an Excel sheet and like has a couple of these things.
That's funny.
I'm like, okay, he's doing Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and like has this idea of things, and I'm like, oh, that's great, because I know he'll also like change it, or if the night's going one way, like it's not like so set, but it's fun.
Okay, but you know what's funny though? I made a comment when I was at a wedding last year. There was this guy that was, you know, I think I had mentioned it to you actually. There was this guy that was interested in me at the wedding, and then someone had asked me what my thoughts were about him, because I think it was actually like he was part of the groom's.
Groomsman?
Yeah, he's one of the
Yeah.
groomsmen, and then basically one of the parents, like a family parent or what friend, whatever, of the groom asked me because they were trying to set me up basically, and I wasn't really like available for it, but like didn't necessarily like say anything to them.
Yeah.
But they kind of asked me what I thought of him, and I actually made the comment saying I felt like he was too similar to me, which was in that sense that he was like really structured, was probably like I think ENTJ or INTJ to
Okay.
be honest, and
Yeah.
that was easily too similar. I didn't even have to like ask. I could just tell.
Yeah.
Like the way he did things was very like by the calendar. And I even like described him to himself, and
Yeah.
he started bursting out laughing and was like, "What the fuck is this? Is this like a joke?" Because I kind of basically
Yeah.
described myself to
Yeah,
him
yeah.
though, and I was just like, so basically I told the parent like, yeah, like he's just too similar. Like I wouldn't like date that because there was no excitement. It was too predictable. Like
Yeah.
the fact I could predict the way he would do things right away was a little like not, I don't know, not attractive, not appealing basically. But she made a comment saying like, oh, you know, take it from someone that's been married for over 20 years, like it becomes better like when they are really similar to you. So
I think you kind of eventually get more similar as a couple
probably
when you're married and
yeah,
all
yeah,
that.
yeah. I don't
Because
know.
you end up doing the more things that you both like or one likes and the
Yeah.
other one. So you do have the complement of like
Right.
you're doing things together all the time. But it is important to have that like expanded like mindset.
Yeah.
in a
I just
partner.
personally I just didn't love the idea of a guy sending me a calendar invite for a date. And I think that's something he made a comment like, oh, I could like send you and I was like, no, don't.
Wait, well, in the beginning, like to go on your like first, second, third date?
Yeah, he as like hypothetical. This was just like fun talk at a wedding, right?
Okay.
But like he was saying that, and I was thinking like, oh, that's so unappealing.
Yeah, that sounds horrible.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
But because I think he thought like because I'm like that, maybe in the business sense, that I would like that, right?
Right.
But that's where you see like the split, where I want something more expansive and like different.
Yeah.
Or less predictable or less like structured and rigid.
Right.
Like I can be that in my business side and my business lifestyle,
Yeah.
whatever we want to call that. But in my personal and maybe more like on the romantic side, I would want it to be more like, I don't know, court me in a more like old school, like a poet way. I don't know, that's a little
Yeah.
extreme. But I do read a lot of literature, so maybe that's why I get all my ideas from Russian literature. You know, like the way they like go to, I don't know, it's so funny too. It's like I've been taken to like the Met Opera for a date, you know, and I like love that stuff.
Yeah.
But like you might not like gauge that unless you like understand me on a deeper level.
Yeah.
But you know, on a surface level, you could be like, I send you a calendar invite and like take you to here, and like that just won't be as like mind expansive.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I'm also like, I feel like I'm kind of a fan of like doing activities.
Yeah.
More so than just let's go to a dinner. Like,
oh, same.
Yeah, I mean, obviously,
Same.
like, you know, it can work, and like it sometimes is good for a schedule if you're like, well, I'm busy, but like, you know, we can have dinner after I like work or whatever. But the activities are the best to like gauge how someone is and like how their reactions are and like you know what is like exciting for them and like humor wise, it's way easier to build bonds.
Yes.
So like guys build bonds with activities.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Is that so?
Yeah, that's a thing.
Okay.
So women are more emotional. So we want the like let's talk about things like whatever it is to have like that interaction for women is like what creates a bond and they want like, you know, touch, feeling, like talk, but men are like activity based.
Interesting.
Yes.
See, but it's funny because I like the activity too, because that's actually what I mainly did with my last guy.
Yeah.
Like we would go on a bike ride all the way up on the west side, like in the beginning of spring. And we would go to like Brighton Beach just for fun, like to the beach. Like it was like a really hot day in August. Like we'd do that. Or we'd go for a hike up in like upstate New York. Like we just take the train up. Like I really enjoyed that because all adventurous. And I was like, I'm going on a little adventure, Dora the Explorer.
I don't know if that's our tomboy side because I have that
that's
too.
true. Okay. Maybe. I don't know. But I really enjoyed it because he would,
fun.
yeah.
And
it was interesting because I think the whole time, which that was probably something I could have done better, which was like reassuring him. I think outside looking in, sometimes you could think like, oh, Emily, I might need to take Emily to a nice dinner. And like when you get to know like the playful side of Emily, you see I'm really simple. Like I just want you to like care the fuck about me. You know? I just want you to pick me over the $5 million deal.
So
you know?
I would like to analyze that because if like, you know, someone gets to know your playful side and like then they would have a better picture. Are we now like kind of looking at him like I wish he would have seen that, or it's like why is he not been able to like see that and understand that for himself yet?
Okay, so that's a good question, right? So I think he always knew that, but I think for him it was more of a slight self-esteem thing from a cultural standpoint.
Okay.
Because he made small comments over our period of time where like I think it came in waves. Like some days he felt fine, and some days I think he kind of got in the lower self-esteem stage of realizing he's not at a point to like fully provide for a woman type of thing. And he made a comment that, quote, he's used to making his woman happy. And I ironically have read that like verbatim in a like in Russian literature. Like that's just like who they are. I came across like a friend who is Russian, and her partner is also from Russia, and he had a Valentine's post that literally was like a caption. It was like very romantic, but the caption, and he's young, like 22 or 23, and it said something like, it's something along the lines of, it's my duty to like make you happy and like all these different things,
Okay.
like, and provide for you and like make sure you have a good life. And ironically, my guy said something similar, that he just sometimes was somewhat insecure that he's not at that place, just from like a physical providing standpoint. And what I don't know how well, whether I could have done it better or not, but I think I thought it was like, oh, that's not a problem though. Like that's not what I'm looking for you to do, at least like right now. And maybe I in my head thought like, oh, I've reassured him it's fine. But obviously when I would get, poached by like that football player, like, and even though we were just friends, I think he was a little concerned that
that's too shiny for you. You might run to that object.
exactly. But you can understand, like, think about it from a male perspective, right? And again, I
Yeah.
didn't think
Oh,
of
yeah.
it, right? But men, like, when another male comes into the photo, like, that's where they get probably more competitive.
Yeah.
I think that's true, right? I think just like from a biological masculine standpoint, I think that's kind of where they get more feisty, like, oh, another male counterpart poaching their woman.
Yeah.
So I think looking back in hindsight, I definitely, in my mind, I was like, oh, but this guy's just a friend. Like, trust me, he's not even a close threat, right?
Yeah.
But this guy is Super Bowl champion, multimillionaire, like all these things. And I still was like, I could care less. I always had my eyes on like my guy,
and I think we have the notion like, if I wanted that, I'll have it,
right?
But I don't,
and that's the thing. And I see that's why maybe I thought it was so clear, because I had already I already had and I already politely declined this guy, and I at that point we were already just friends.
Yeah,
but I can understand him having so much shininess, like. I don't know. I get it now from a male perspective. That could when you are still in your developmental stage on the financial side or career side, and you're seeing that your woman is just friends with a multi-mystic. I get it now, but to be honest, in the moment I didn't, because I thought it was maybe so obvious that I wasn't gonna go towards this guy, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But he expressed an insecurity in that, so that played a part in kind of where we're at now. Because I think it just from a nature, he wants to be there, like at his full capacity.
Yeah.
And he just isn't there. So over time, because of other things like that, I think that's to answer your question.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Insecurity is an interesting thing. Like, do you think you could be with a partner that is insecure? Like, do you think that he would have to work on that? Or do you think that this is just something that you can try to like talk through it on more emotionally?
Yeah.
Like, what do you think about that in terms of like a partner?
I think from that particular experience, I think that was rather surface level insecurity, in terms of it was 50-50. I definitely could have done or made wiser choices in realizing how men are. Like, I had another guy friend, when I asked for like a third perspective opinion, how bad is it to hang out with another male friend? And he goes, okay. He's like, it's okay if you hang out with a male friend, but if that male friend was previously interested in you, that's a no.
Even if you weren't previously interested in that.
Yeah, and then he got into this whole psychology.
Yeah, I guess that.
Right. And then again, I think at that time I was a bit naive in that sense, where I didn't think it mattered because I wasn't interested. And it was funny how I had a few guy friends that made a comment that said like, you might not understand how men are then. Yeah, see, he's even nodding his head. So I get it in hindsight now, right? Which sucks, because I think...
It's funny because, like, I feel like as women, we always make the case of, like,
right.
Well, why? It's like, well...
Right. But see, that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
But because if I had been able to maybe realize that more in that time, because I care about my person so much, I could easily... Like, this was not like a needed friendship. I didn't have to, like, hang out with him.
Yeah.
Or even though that was in a group setting. But I think I understand it from that standpoint, because he wasn't insecure about like another person, but I think it was just that I probably could have been more respectful in that sense of of like I didn't need to go hang out in that group. You know, and because especially that didn't matter to me, I'm like, okay, totally get it. But like he doesn't care if I hang out with like my other best guy friends. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and maybe this is a question for you, but like would you be okay if your girlfriend was like, hey, I want like you know, this guy's a friend of mine, like can you come hang out with us? Like would you be open to meeting them, or you still it's like a no?
Well, it depends.
Because I would think from like I would want to know them, like, and then kind of like posture a little bit, you know, or at least like have they were, but the girl wasn't.
It's gonna be weird though.
See, okay, it is, yeah.
Because I have HSP, so I'm a highly sensitive person.
Okay.
So I took the whole test and everything. I'm like 75% out of 100 on the scale. So I will pick up your energy even if you're in the other room.
Even if like your girlfriend was making you feel like the center of the room and like really comfortable and like.
So at that point, well, for me personally, I couldn't help it based on just energy.
Okay.
So everything could be fine,
but like, why are we here? Yeah. Okay.
But that would, like,
yeah.
Really
yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Other people might have a different response.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think too, when I look back, right, like I wouldn't be bothered if my partner would prefer me, because he was never like you can't. He was just expressing like you know, maybe why that could make him feel a certain way. And even though I naively thought, well, I'm not interested in him, so it doesn't matter, like now looking back and getting objective opinion from other guys, both like friends but also like their friends, so people that didn't even know me directly, they all gave actually similar answers.
Okay.
So I saw it from a more, my interpretation was more of like a respect thing, and in vice versa, like the same question would be if they were hanging out with a girl that they weren't even interested in, not even remotely, but that girl was previously interested in him, would I be bothered? Personally, I would say yes, and therefore that's a fair like a respect thing of like don't hang out with her then, or like not even in a group setting. But I think again that goes down to like personal preference. And it wouldn't be out of insecurity necessarily, but I think it would probably just be more out of, well, it doesn't make sense for you to hang out with her, right? But if it is like completely just friends though, like almost like a sisterly brotherly thing, I don't mind.
Yeah.
But because I have a lot of those friends, because I can understand why a girl could come into one of my best friends, Harry, they might think like Emily's a threat, and I'm like a fucking sister to him, like an older sister type of thing. So, and you could see that in our dynamic. We're too like joking with the way we talk to each other is like not like cute. It's like kind of rough, you know, like more of like a brother. And I have an older brother, so that might be where I got my energy from. And you have brothers too, so you kind of know the dynamic there. But I would understand and respect why a girlfriend of like my best friend could initially think, without meeting me and seeing our dynamic, could think she's like, don't hang out with her.
I feel like by nature people kind of like always are.
Right.
The mind runs. So I guess as long as whatever you can do to help quiet it would be best.
Yeah.
So that part makes sense, I think.
Yeah. The whole, I was thinking about where that question came from, like the insecurity thing. Yeah. I think too, it's interesting because from my experience, I would say that some of the things that are harder to change are like, the first thing that comes to mind is actual personal vision. Like, what do you want in life, and kind of what do you want for yourself? And I think that to me is a big discrepancy. If we have different ideas and different visions, that's a clear indicator. I think the small things like improving on communication and like small insecurities, like I think those are small, because as a partner you can do better to reassure them. Like if you know that that's a sensitive point, you can, like, I believe like I can step up a bit and like reassure them or avoid those situations and like communicate that. And I believe I could get that vice versa from a partner, you know? So I think those are very changeable, because those are just habits. Those are just patterns you can change. But I think when it comes to like a long-term desire, what you want, whether that's like maybe being like a nomad where you live a little bit in different cities, like things like that, right? Those I think, or like maybe someone wants to go like camping in an RV, or like, you know, like that just wouldn't be in alignment with me, because like they might have more of like a mountain adventurous type, you know, and that just wouldn't be for me, right? But I think those small things, or maybe someone is like very dead set on having a big family, that might not be something I want. So,
Okay.
things like that I think are less changeable than your ability to meet and find common ground in the way you communicate. So you reassure one another, things like that. I think those are just called relationship skills.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ugh.
What do you think?
I'm just thinking of like a relationship that I've had in the past, and I feel like communication ended up being like the whole biggest thing. And it was like, even if I tried my hardest to like deliver things in certain ways or like try to like cater that person, it has to go both ways. One, but two, sometimes the patterns just don't, they're very hard to work on. Sometimes they're so ingrained because it comes way back from like
From your
family,
past, yes.
upbringing, like friends, like everything.
Mhm.
So sometimes it's very hard to like work on communication. But I guess that's also where, if you had like all the things in the beginning or like all the forefront of like the feelings and stuff and the things of like our personalities just click and all the other aspects, then like that's easier to work on. But if you're lacking in some of those areas, then communication is hard.
Yeah.
Super hard.
Yeah. I think it is true. I think it is easier when the foundation of other things are pretty strong. Like you just naturally being able to mesh together, that I do think when it comes to focusing on one or two other parts of the relationship that are inevitable, like it will come up. I've always heard the studies say like communication is one of the biggest reasons why relationships don't work, or like relationships fail or end, so to speak.
Now that I'm thinking about it, you've probably had a pretty big impact on me in some ways. Like,
oh, really?
Yeah, and I feel like because it goes back to like the dynamic we're talking about, of, like
Yeah.
in Miami, Terry and I are like kind of crazy,
Yeah,
and like
yeah.
whatever, like so loose with like scheduling and whatever.
Yeah.
So, but you have your structures, and like you do always talk about these like bigger visions you have and all that, and like alignment and all those things. So I probably never started thinking about that until
Interesting.
until at some point after Miami. And like I look at you in a lot of ways that I'm like inspired by because like it's cool. It's really cool to see that.
Yeah.
Because you're also younger than me, and it's like, how did you get your head on straight? Kind of thing like that. Like,
yeah, no, it's funny.
like,
no, but
interesting.
it's interesting because I got my head on straight because I was wrecked by the breakup that happened. Like everyone on who listens to my podcast has heard this story a million times. Like, but that's how impactful that breakup was.
Yeah.
When like I don't know how often anyone would get broken up with at the age of 20, where they're living with that partner, they have a dog with the person, you're 3,000 miles away from home.
You were like already like 20,
right.
30,
and
35. Like
yeah, right. I've hit every bucket of a relationship in terms of I've lived with a partner and I've had a dog with them.
Yeah.
Like those are like the true things you do when you're like 30 or whatever. Like when you're right. But I've had that already with a partner, and then I was transferring to a new school at the time, so I had no friends. I had no friends to talk to. Like actually zero. There's no exaggeration. Like I didn't even have anyone to call up to go get Starbucks with. So that's like, imagine how like emotionally dark that is.
Yeah.
And then also not being able to share that with family because like I just culturally I think it'd be hard to understand like the process of like getting through something and working through it, whereas I think the mentality, especially from one of my parents, would be like, oh, you gotta be strong, you gotta move on, like type of thing. And it wasn't like that. It was more like there were certain things I could have worked on.
Yeah.
So then I just took that path on my own. So then it's like I had to like parent myself basically in that process from like 20 to 21. Yeah, or like past 21, basically from sophomore to end of junior year, which was like really enlightening because I that's why we were able to get back together. So we were broken up for 8 months, then we get back together because like I improved so much, but then his growth was like really stagnant. So then
because you almost like outgrew him.
So I actually did by that point. By the time the relationship ended, that was like big part why, because I outgrew him so immensely because I had no other route, but he went back to pretty Del Mar and and like enjoying board and brew with the bros, with like the right, that sauce is so good. I've missed that sandwich so much. But yeah, so I think that was why. But I think that's why when I saw how like, okay, we had alignment and then we kind of went out of alignment, like you kind of evaluate it over like each chapter of your relationship. And so going into new ones, it's a blessing and a curse where I've been able to see it so distinctively if I feel aligned with someone. That's both on an energetic level, but also just like a common values, a common interest thing. Like just on the small nuggets that you say in your conversation, you can really pick up if you have basic alignment to go on maybe a second date, And to me, it kind of sucks because obviously, as you know, I've been on like since my like limbo phase. I've gone on other first dates types of things just because I get approached a lot. And with that experience and knowing what alignment feels like, it's so distinct. Like,
Yeah.
this is, you can feel it. And it's the same thing where I never was the type of person to be like, oh, I feel this right away with someone until my last partner. It was like, there was no question about it. And then, yeah, and it's funny because I told you this when we got nails the other day, but like the weekend I met him, which was like New Year's of the past year, I remember I had wrote down like it felt like having a boyfriend for the weekend. Like I would joke using my verbiage, like I rented a boyfriend, like it's like I just had him for the weekend.
Yeah.
But that's the I rented a boyfriend, you know. But that's the level of comfort I had with this person right off the bat when I met him. And like being with him for the whole weekend. And then he leaves to go to Alaska for 2 months because that was already like his planned winter trip or something. And he's like on a boat for like,
Wow.
yeah. And then he comes back like 2 months later and like we just like kick it off like that.
Yeah.
And then he like takes me on this like, like beautiful birthday surprise. And it was like really cute too because it's funny because my birthday's approaching. So this is like basically like almost a year ago from when this happened. But like, he was so elaborate in like the way he like cared for me. Like again, 2 months of being apart, talking a little bit because he only had like
cell service.
yes, right.
Yeah.
In Alaska it was shitty and being on a boat, right? So and he told me that kind of beforehand. But then I remember like on the way back from like this birthday surprise he took me on, like he pulls out a small like tiny cheesecake and he's like, well, you can't have a New York birthday without like a New York cheesecake. And so he takes it out, pops it, like he had a box of candles, like takes candles in there. We're in an Uber. He lights
In an Uber?
Yeah. And he just, that's what I'm saying. I love the ballsiness, right? And he just like lights it and he's like, okay, you have to make a wish. And I'm like, I'm looking at the Uber driver.
Yeah.
He doesn't care at all. He
Yeah.
doesn't say anything. And I like blow it out. But like he thought through this like in such detail. I was like, holy shit. Like I was so like I've never been just like thought of in such a way, and it was so thoughtful.
So it got your courting.
Yeah. No, it felt like it was out of a literature book,
Yeah.
Like just like he took me to this immersive play experience, and then like we went to drinks and like small bites after, and then yeah, it was just really thoughtful. Yeah.
So what would you, I guess, now in the ways that you thought of alignment in the past and then going forward with that, what are you kind of like looking for? Like, because you're saying that you could go on a date with somebody and you'll know like after that first date, like where the alignment is. I think like I've in the past confused that with fun or like I'm having such a good time that like I wouldn't even have like thought, I'm not sure where it'll go, but I'll like keep dating to see what happens.
Yeah. Okay, I see what you mean.
So like when would you make that distinction and like would you
Totally.
go about it differently or do you kind of like go about them the same?
I think I go about it in the same because I think first off, when it comes to energy, if like I've seen it before, and I'll give this example too. There was one person specifically, he actually lives abroad, but like we went for coffee. I think I told you, because I met him at So Else, and we went for coffee, but he's a bit older, like has very similar energetic alignment. And I felt that just from coffee, right? Just from a conversation, like nothing intimate, just from a coffee conversation. Whereas the other ones that I've been out with, whether it was like for dinner or they like tried to like took me to drinks, whatever, it was complete different experience just from an energetic level. So I feel like I would need to feel that with someone, and that's why even on The Bachelor, I'm sure Bachelor like leads could like even say this or any dating show. That's why there's certain chemistry you see with certain contestants. Like you can see it right away, even on the camera. Like you can see it. And I think that's why they also know from like day 1 or day 2, like they've narrowed it down to like 2 people. Like there's like literally 2 people you hit it off with. So I think that goes the same way where I don't think I need a second date with someone to see if I hit it off with them. But I think because if it hits off, it you hit it off, right? But I think I would need that first, like that kind of alignment, like we just naturally connect, right? Like that is one way of aligning. But I think the second part would be the practical longevity part of like as you start to date and he courts you court one another. I think that alignment would come more from kind of like what's your vision in life, like what do you want for yourself, and I kind of gauge if that crosses with my own individual path and desires. You know what I mean? Like if someone tells me that they want to be able to kind of like have a partner to travel and like do things with, and like and maybe like not looking to necessarily have a family within the next 5 years. Like that's probably more in alignment with me, because like I'm personally not, you know. Whereas like if I met someone that was looking to ideally have kids within the next 3 years, I'd probably be like, I'd say maybe like maybe, you know, but you know, it's probably still like we have different desires then.
So are you asking the hard questions in these
Oh,
dates?
not those, but I think like over time, like I think first it comes from like energetic alignment, and then
Okay.
like common interests,
Yeah.
right? Things like that. Similar banter, I guess, like
Yeah,
the banter,
banter
right?
is my favorite
Oh
thing
my
about
God, it hits different. Like, you know, when you can throw a good joke with the guy, it's the best. Because I have dark humor, and I think I've thrown off some guys with my humor that like, oh, you know, and so that's why I love when they can play with it.
Mhm.
But I would say, you know, by like third or fourth, you know, fifth hanging out, it's at that point you start to kind of gauge like what's there, like what are you kind of like looking for in
Yeah.
terms of like for yourself, not like for a partner, but like what are you looking for yourself? How does a partner come into that? And I think there are natural ways to bring it about, or like, you know what I mean, it doesn't have to be a direct question. Is
Mhm.
my personal process.
Okay.
What about you? Have you thought about that?
Well, I guess now that no. Like only because I run with it. But if it's gonna be
Interesting.
fun the first time, then I just imagine like that I'm open to it.
Okay,
Because that's what
interesting.
I need, like, you know,
Okay,
throughout my whole life. So I just want to make sure like I can go have fun
I
the
see,
first date
and like okay, and observe
and
all the
then see
options.
what happens.
Because okay, maybe this is maybe my obstacle is that if I my energy is so like when you get the full version of Emily, like it's very contagious and very like full.
Yeah.
And like someone who's with me knows that. So I think
Yeah.
for me it's really hard because my other energy is also split between like my work and my business and like other things I do, and like obviously my girlfriends, my friendships. So it is hard for me to allow myself, or like just like just intuitively, like I can't just like keep going to something, because like subconsciously if I go on a second date with someone that I'm like, yeah, about, like I know this, and then I'm like walking and going to the Uber and like going to the date as I'm like subconsciously like, I don't really feel like doing this, like, you know, like you kind of like know it.
Yeah.
And then I've had maybe past times where I like tried to like push myself just to go, just to, like have the experience. And I think as I've gotten older and had like smaller energy to allocate, I can't even fathom like doing it anymore. Like just to like see how it goes.
I get it.
You know what I mean?
I think I have a lot of energy. Like I don't
Mhm.
like I go to bed really late, and you know I do sleep in the morning usually,
Yeah.
but like I have a lot of energy socially because I feel like I get all my energy from that.
Mm.
So like I think, I mean, in order for me to even deem that first date or whatever to be super fun and like enjoyable,
Mhm.
like it's going to, if it hit me on some level of like jokes or logic, or like, you know, have something where then it makes sense.
Mhm.
But I definitely have given sometimes people another date or whatever it is to like kind of make up for that and see if there was like something I didn't see before.
Yeah.
Because I know some people, like I'm kind of like wide open. Like I'll just be like,
Mhm.
hey, like
Yeah,
I
yeah.
I typically am very similar. I'm very happy and smiling and like whatever.
Yeah.
So I feel like because I'm like that, it kind of opens their personality.
Mhm.
So then I can see like if they're either, you know, kind of like, I guess what their demeanor is like,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
like how they play with my like positivity, because otherwise like that's an indicator.
Right. But see,
And
but
if I'm
yeah.
enjoying it too.
But it's interesting because it kind of goes back to, I think, something I said earlier, just about how they make you feel.
Yeah.
I don't think it takes a long time to see how they make you feel.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think it takes 2 dates to know how you feel around someone. I used to think like, oh, you need time to see, and then after having some experiences, even with like my last one and some people I've met in between, there's like, for me, I can even think of one person I'd be willing to give like a second date shot, and like of like the few other guys I've like gone on dates with, and it's simply and we only had coffee. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's simply how it's just like the way you connect. It's you don't really you're not able to explain it in a logical way.
Yeah.
It's just
I guess
something,
that's where
you know
I
what I
always
mean?
try to do it like
Oh,
that too.
okay. See, that's what I'm saying. It's like I just like you can just tell it's either there or it's not.
Yeah.
You know? So I
I
think
know that more now.
yeah. I think that's where the like initial alignment comes into play. And even with like my last partner, like just having met him on like New Year's Eve, and like we talked that whole night, and just there was like an energetic connection there. It's just unexplainable. Like
Mhm.
so there was no rational reason to like keep hanging out, but like I think we both enjoyed each other's presence, you know?
Yeah.
From just, I don't know, maybe like a spiritual level, like just like an energetic spiritual level.
Are you familiar with those? What's the 3 C's? It's like chemistry,
Mm.
chemistry,
Connection,
I think, and like compatibility. I don't even know if connection's the other C.
I'm not sure. Yeah,
Anyway,
okay.
there's like, there's supposed to be like the balances of like that initial like attraction you have to someone versus like the compatibility of your like lifestyles and daily hobbies and habits and all that.
Yeah.
And then there's kind of like the other one, and I forget which one of them builds, but I guess if you don't know, we'll have to revisit that one later. But they have an interesting like interplay, because I'd be curious. I'll ask you another time.
Oh, one of them builds?
Yeah.
Oh.
One of them builds. One's like initial like interaction, and that could be like the feeling that you get from a first date. And then compatibility is kind of like, okay, it's kind of down the road, but it's kind of like you can see already probably a little bit of that first date. And then one of them like totally builds over time. And that might be the connection side of, but
interesting.
They all kind of like play into what will like deem a relationship to last or not.
Yeah. Okay, I have one last question I feel like we need to answer on this, because it's kind of similar to the AHA thing, but rather maybe something that we used to think matters a lot in a relationship or in a potential one, and now we realize does not have as much of an effect.
Do you have one on top of your mind? I know things I like undervalued, and now I'd have to think about what now I would fully think of differently. Well, one, I think sometimes like guys, I feel like I've dated them and they tend to get like controlling over me in some way. And that I like can't stand. But I would kind of like wasn't sure if like I, they should feel like that, and I should be like not necessarily submissive to that, but like, catering to it.
Right.
And then like I think I undervalued like the feeling that I should have like more freedom and like, really embody like where I am at this age of like I like to be like go out and look good and like all that. And so like I would like attention. So like I want someone that like will be by with me and like allow me to feel those things that I want to feel, or like be with me and kind of have the not like the nervous side of like insecurity in that front that like enable or makes them feel like they can like kind of control me through things.
Okay.
That's one thing.
Okay. I think the one thing I used to care about was it's kind of similar to the like what I alluded to earlier, but I think primarily around this idea of you, like I guess maybe I used to care about the external things a bit more, and I think once I finally experienced something that was, ironically, I actually wrote this in a journal too, like it felt very enlightened being around him. And so I guess I was about to say, once I felt something more enlightening, I realized like all of the external things just go out the door, because those can build, is kind of how I see it, right? So in terms of maybe a certain, I don't know, a certain lifestyle, whatever on the external, like earth things are, like whether it's like being able to have a certain lifestyle, have a certain home, like those things, those are buildable. And I think maybe at one point I might have assumed that kind of needed to already be present or partially present in order for it to be more in alignment. And I think though, like I realized like I cared about that a lot less, and I cared more about the spiritual connection, the energetic connection.
Yeah.
And more importantly, like how they made me feel.
Yeah, I guess the value I could place on that too. The feeling is extremely important, and the emotional side.
Yeah.
Of like someone taking care of your emotions or putting you first, and like what you mentioned about the $5 million.
Right. Yeah, the question, I don't know if it was in this cup, but like basically, my biggest thing is at the end of the day, especially with like work, right? Like, where I got that idea from too is basically I'm saying they can step away from work and like walk away and like go spend time with me, because I've seen workaholics, I've seen people that are like, hold on, like I'm slammed at work, right? Like I fucking hate those statements. I honestly, people might think I like workaholics because people might think I'm a workaholic, and I actually am not. I'm actually genuinely not. I actually put relationships before work any day.
Yeah.
Like any day. So I think that's something I look for as someone that values that too, is they would drop everything, including a $5 million deal if that's on the line, if something is more pertinent, like your person or a relationship. And again, in those cases, that's an extreme case. Like if it's like a deal versus like I'm just being needy, that's like different.
Yeah.
But if it's like I really actually need you to be here for me, what will you choose? Like that's like that comes out of a value system.
Value, yeah.
Yeah, that comes out of like
priority.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, yes, that's a big important thing.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
What do you feel like I guess, like, what's the biggest thing that's changed for you from your 20-year-old self of the relationship you were in at that point in time to like where you are at now?
Oh, I think the biggest one is that I genuinely stopped caring about what other people think externally, especially of the relationship. So that's
big.
Yeah, because I think getting back together even with him and then me at my former partner, I was the one that kind of pursued him in the sense of wanting him to recognize that I've evolved and changed, and that I think it was worth seeing how that relationship could play out with me being at a healthier place. And obviously, for starters, I think most people are telling me like don't chase him or like don't go after him type of thing. And gut instinct didn't feel that way. Like I didn't feel like I was chasing him, but I felt like it was worth a shot, you know? And so that I trusted that. And I think that was when I realized like, hey, my gut instinct was right on this. And so I stopped caring of how it looked and how people were like, oh, why are you back together? Like that doesn't make sense, all this stuff. So I think leading on to my most recent experience, I really appreciated the more intimate time we had together and not really indulging in like, oh, bringing my partner to things with my friends or like bringing my partner to, you know, weddings, like things like that, like on the new, like especially when we were like in the new stage, like I really enjoyed it just being us. And because that kind of builds the foundation of, you know, how you and your partner are. At the end of the day, it's like just you and your relationship. And that's what I love from Naval, that guy, that the tech guy we love to talk about. He has a single player game theory or whatever. Basically, like, you know, at the end of the day, you kind of like, you're the only one playing.
Yeah.
And I take from it that it only has to make sense to you. Like life only has to make sense to you. It doesn't have to make sense to your parents. It doesn't have to make sense to your best friend. It just has to make sense to you.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm sure with my last guy, like he might not have made sense to people that have known me for a while, but like to it on a surface level, but it made sense to me. And that's why I just genuinely didn't care.
So what advice like could you give someone? Because say like someone's in a either like a cultural thing or you know they're gonna be dating someone with their parents.
Yeah.
Where their parents are maybe, you know,
this is a great one
this to just be like a different thing, or like, you know, people are always changing their views on what they imagine they're gonna be like, and you know, parents always have, I'm sure, their own interpretation of what your life is gonna be like. So
no, I think this is
what advice would you say?
Great one to like end it on to, which is the biggest practice you have to have is like practicing the muscle of this is for me, not for my parents or not for my family. And I've done that obviously myself. I've trained myself in that way because obviously I've lived a life that is not in full agreement with my mom especially. But I think it came, I was able to validate it because I realized like I am the one that lives this life. Like even if I do something in favor of what she wants for me, like later on I will resent that because it wasn't in alignment with me, right? It wasn't in alignment with what I genuinely wanted. And secondly, I don't really want to look back and wish I lived life differently. Like, oh, I should have done that because that's what I wanted to do. It's like I would be slapping myself in the face saying, well, you had your chance. You just chose to listen to someone else. So now you like live with those decisions. Yeah. You know what I mean? So heavy. And those are, it's heavy because at the end of the day, like your parents are going to go more likely before you do, not to make it dark, but like when they're gone, like you live with those decisions then. Like you wake up to that person. That's my biggest thing. You wake up to that person, you go to bed with that person, you live with that person. Your parents don't. Yeah. So it shouldn't matter to them. And that's like the pattern I tell myself all the time.
Yeah. I feel like that ties into the whole, like you're dating the person and not the family kind of thing.
Yes. Yeah.
You know, you're not with the family every single day, usually.
I know. Oh, man. I think we definitely need to do a part 2, actually. We have more to talk about for sure.
A lot more.
Okay. Well, Caroline, thanks for coming on for a fun little raw talk.
Thank you for having me. This is super fun.
This is super fun.